Good evening. It is shortly after 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, July 5th, 2022, and this is the regular meeting of the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Chairman John Hastings presiding. Also present are Commissioners Mo Stunkel, Slate Camp, Luke Ahmet, Amelia Boyd. Commissioner McGran is absent this evening. We will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will please stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any other general announcements from the commissioners or from city staff? Seeing none. Next on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 21st, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business. The first item on the agenda this evening is a public hearing on a request for a comprehensive plan land use designation amendment from context area industrial to context area 4 and a rezoning request from IG industrial general to commercial C. The two parcels total approximately 0.32 acres and are located at 1801 RPS 734511300030A and 1807 RPS 734511400040A, Culvers Drive, and legally described as lots 13 and 14 of Cox's addition to Sandpoint, according to the plat thereof, recorded May 17th, 1993, as instrument number 424699 in Book 4 of Plats, page 169, and amendment thereto, recorded July 28th, 1994, as instrument number 449640, records of Bonner County, Idaho. A notice of public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee, the city's newspaper of record, on June 14th, 2022. The order and procedure for both public hearings this evening will be as follows. Explanation of the subject of the public hearing by city staff, then presentation by the applicant. Please note that commissioners should address their questions to the applicant at that time. Opening of the public hearing, at which time the public may provide testimony. Questions should be asked of those testifying at that time. The order of those providing testimony will be as follows: first in favor, then neutral, and finally opposed. Then the applicant's rebuttal testimony, at which time final questions may be asked of the applicant. Please note that if new facts are elicited during rebuttal, the public will be giving an opportunity to comment on any new facts. Then we will close the public hearing and the commission will deliberate. No new information may be provided after the hearing has been closed, with questions directed only to city staff during the deliberations. Before we proceed any further, I would like to ask for confirmation from each commissioner, please, that you have no ex parte contact and no conflict of interest as pertains to this application.
None.
No.
No.
None.
And none here either. Do commissioners have any questions for staff? One second. I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeten for an introduction of this request and explanation of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have a presentation? Okay.
You're welcome to go ahead and start.
Okay. The public hearing this evening is for a comprehensive plan land use map amendment and a rezone request. The request is for an amendment to the land use map and zoning for 1801 and 1807 Culvers Drive. The site was approved under a previous zoning district that allowed mixed-use buildings to include residential uses. And the existing buildings on the site were built between 2008 and 2019. The current industrial general zoning district does not allow construction of multiple family units. So to allow completion of the project as it was originally contemplated, a comprehensive plan land use amendment and rezoning is necessary. The request would change the land use designation from industrial to character area 4 and the zoning from industrial general to commercial C. The action by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the request will be a recommendation to City Council, and a rezone request must be compatible with the comprehensive plan. Therefore, the comprehensive plan amendment recommendation must be acted on before the rezoning request. While the anticipated use of the property is multiple family residential, the proposed commercial C zoning is more compatible with the surrounding industrial general district than a rezoning to the residential multiple family district, and would allow a mix of uses. The commission could remove some of the allowed uses through a zoning agreement. And staff recommends that a zoning agreement include at a minimum terms and conditions related to utility improvements that are necessary to address the current non-compliant services on the site. On the request to amend the comprehensive land use map, the commission should make findings on the following questions. The existing and proposed use of the parcels would be multiple family residential, bringing the property into zoning compliance. The proposed context area for land use designation is or is not consistent and compatible with existing and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. Next slide, please. On the request to amend the zoning designation, the commission should make findings on the following questions. The proposed zone change is or is not in conformance with future land use map and other policies within the comprehensive plan. The proposed commercial C zone is or is not consistent and compatible with existing zoning and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. And the particular consideration has or has not been given to the effects of the proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the planning jurisdiction. After receiving public comment and deliberation, the commission may recommend to City Council that the comprehensive land use amendment and rezoning request be approved subject to a zoning agreement or denied. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff at this time? Hearing none. With that, I will now yield the floor for the applicant's presentation. If the applicant's representative will please step to the podium and introduce yourself.
My name is Teague Mullen. I live at 4160 Sunnyside Road. Basically, what we're trying to do here is just finish a project that was started and was done incorrectly. And we're trying to clean up, the pieces to what's existing and then what should be done there to finish it. But that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any additional questions for the applicant before proceeding to the public hearing? No.
I do.
I actually.
Okay, I thought there was going to be some, yes.
So when you say it was done wrong, was there a change of ownership in between there?
So the project was started by Forrest Phillips, and Forrest Phillips had a loan on the property that was 13 different owners that gave him a hard money loan. And then he got foreclosed on by these owners. So it's been existing with these 13 different ownerships that had an LLC to loan him the money. And so now, in 2008, when the market crashed, everything turned to basically lost it. These guys inherited it, and then we purchased it from these people that didn't even start the project. And so it was done incorrectly in a way that it was never final platted for condos. So the original development was slated for apartments. So Forest Phillips built these apartments, and then he went to the county and recorded a declaration that made them condos without getting the city's approval for condos and going through a final plat with the condos. So everyone that's purchased in there has basically purchased a condo that was not approved by the city of Sandpoint and was platted.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Answered.
Oh,
Thank
It
you.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. If there are no additional questions, giving you time to respond to that. Then I will now recite the public hearing rules and procedures. Please note that as provided in the notice of public hearing and as stated within the meeting packet posted on the city website, all written comments are to be delivered to the city clerk. Those comments that were received by way of that stated procedure were either included in the meeting packet or, if received in time prior to the meeting, were forwarded to the commissioners. This process must be followed to ensure comments are properly included in the permanent hearing record. I would like to ask for your attention at this time, please, as I recite the standards for public testimony during this evening's public hearing. 1, testimony shall directly address the subject at hand. 2, testimony shall not be personally derogatory towards any individual, organization, or business. 3, public comment opportunities are for comment only. Do not direct questions to the commissioners or to staff. 4, in the interest of time, testimony shall not be repetitious, and each speaker is allotted no more than 3 minutes. If your testimony fails to comply with these standards, it will be declared out of order and you will be asked to cease. Those here in chambers who wish to speak will need to complete a sign-up form and hand it to the clerk. Do not approach the dais. The forms are available on the table by the door. Those on Zoom will also have an opportunity to speak. Those in attendance are not to disrupt this meeting or business at hand that is being taken up by the commission. Disruptive behaviors include clapping, disruptive noise, comments, or exclamations from the audience. We will now proceed with the public hearing. Do we have people participating on Zoom?
We do have 2 individuals on Zoom.
Thank you. For those participating on Zoom, when your name is called, you will see a prompt on your screen asking whether you would like to unmute. Then you will need to unmute yourself in order to be heard. The clerk will now lower all hands on Zoom in order to take testimony in the order previously stated. If you wish to speak in favor, neutral, or in opposition, I will make a call for each. Then you may raise your hand at that time. And just a reminder, in the interest of time, please do not repeat prior comments made by others, but simply state your support for those comments. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes. The public hearing is now open. We will begin with those in the room who wish to testify in favor. Madam Clerk, will you please call the first speaker to the podium?
We do not have any individuals in the Zoom that would like to testify in favor.
Thank you. We will now recognize those participating remotely. If you are participating on Zoom and wish to testify in favor of this request, please raise your hand at this time.
Mr. Chairman, we do not have any remote individuals that would like to testify in favor.
Thank you. We will now move on to those who are neutral to this proposal. We will now recognize those in the room who wish to testify as neutral. Madam Clerk, is there anyone here in the chambers who wishes to testify as neutral?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone in the room that would like to testify as neutral.
Thank you. If you are participating on Zoom and wish to testify as neutral, please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, we do not have any individuals on Zoom that would like to testify as neutral.
Thank you. Finally, we will hear from those who are opposed to this request. We will now recognize those in the room who wish to testify in opposition. Madam Clerk, is there anyone here in chambers who wishes to testify who is opposed?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone in the room that would like to testify as opposed.
Thank you. If you are participating on Zoom and wish to testify as opposed, please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone on Zoom that would like to testify as
Okay.
opposed.
Is there anyone else on Zoom or here in the room who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone else who would like to speak and has not had an opportunity to do so? Do commissioners have any questions at this time?
Close the public hearing.
Pardon?
Need to close the public
We
hearing.
can, I'm just trying to give us plenty of time in case we need to. And with no testimony, there's no need for rebuttal. So before I close the public hearing, do commissioners have any final questions for the applicant? Okay,
Actually, I might have one. I'd like a little clarification on the water non-compliance that is addressed in the staff report.
Do you want to? I'll defer to staff on the water compliance, and what we're going to be asking for is to become in compliance with the water for our future development, and then have what's existing to remain. And we have different sides of opinion between staff and us on that, but we're going to come to a water agreement on how we're going to develop and do that. So if you want to explain to them what the water situation is existing, it would be great.
I'm happy to do that once you close the.
okay. All good then? Okay. So the public hearing is now closed, and at this time, the commission will deliberate. No new information may be provided, and questions may be directed only to city staff during deliberations. Do commissioners have questions for staff at this time, particularly as relates to water?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the existing water conditions, the short version is that the city code and the Department of Environmental Quality requires that each individual structure be served separately. In its current configuration, each structure is served off of a 2-inch main, which is substandard. So it would be required that each structure be served off of an 8-inch main to comply with DEQ and city requirements. So the applicant's statement was accurate that our intent, should this be approved, is that we would negotiate a final zoning agreement that would result in how exactly that resolution would meet our standards as well as the states as they move forward with any potential additional structures at that site.
And both the current structures are the ones that are out of compliance.
That's correct. There are no services at this time to the existing foundations on site.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of the existing ones that were already built. Those are in compliance?
Those are not in compliance.
Those are not in compliance either.
Is there more than one solution for this?
Yes. The alternative solution would be to individually serve each structure off of the existing main within Culver's Drive.
And as, well, excuse me, am I interrupting, or did you?
Go for it.
As currently configured, is each structure, how many housing units?
4.
4. And those were
3.
3.
three. And those have been sold as condominiums. I mean, they're individual ownership.
And they're occupied?
Yes.
Good.
Commissioners, do we have other comments? Where are we looking headed at this time?
My comment, Amanda, is a question: is existing practice to try to go ex post facto to ask somebody to fix that? Or is existing practice to accept that it's grandfathered?
So we don't typically use the term grandfathered. However, if the existing structures weren't taking action on the site, meaning they were remaining as is and no further action, meaning a building permit was not being requested from the city, we would not request that they upgrade those mains. The difference being that 4 additional permits are being considered for these 2 lots, 4 in total, 2 per lot. And that action gives us the ability to ensure that everyone is properly serviced. The service is really rooted in being able to provide fire flows and adequate pressure to each one of those structures. So it's less about, we have this rule and you must comply with all rules, versus the rules have a purpose. And that purpose is adequate water service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Was it ever in compliance?
No.
Any? Just a couple thoughts. One is it's an opportunity, if you will, to correct a situation that is not in the public interest. On the other hand, it always seems a little bit odd to be working backwards, if you will, instead of forwards. So.
I'm assuming that was just missed in the inspection process.
Yeah, I'm not really able to speak to it. It was several years ago. And just to clarify for the record, the portion that's not in compliance is the water. The zoning was in compliance when it was applied for at its initial application.
Understood.
And at that time, it all was still within city limits. That was not an area that was added in this process at any time.
That's correct.
Because we mentioned that it had been platted at the county, but not the city.
Condominium declarations were recorded at the county, which is typical, even if you're within city limits.
Gotcha.
The missing piece was the plat.
Okay.
Would it be possible to pull the zoning map up on the GIS color codes?
Since we took Amy's Zoom abilities away, yes, I'm happy to do that. Not intentionally. Are you familiar with the color coding?
I am. I was just looking for commercial C in the area.
The nearest commercial C would be along Highway 2.
Thank you. I'm done with that.
Thoughts? Anybody ready to make any kind of motions?
I'm ready.
Thank you.
I move the Sandpoint Planning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend that the Sandpoint City Council approve the request by RPPT LLC and Blue Diamond Investments and Construction LLC for a comprehensive plan map amendment to change the future land use designation from context area industrial to context area 4 for the property known as 1801 and 1807 Culvers Drive and legally described as lots 13 and 14 of Cox sub addition to Sandpoint according to the plat thereof recorded May 17th, 1993 as instrument number 424699 in book 4 of plats, page 169, and amendment thereto recorded July 28th, 1994 as instrument number 449640 as or excuse me, records of Bonner County, Idaho. The reasons for this decision are: 1, the existing proposed use of the parcels would be multiple family residential, bringing the property into zoning conformance. 2, the proposed context area 4 land use designation is consistent and compatible with existing and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. 3, staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to zone changes contained in Idaho Code 67-6511 and Sandpoint City Code Title 9, Chapter 9. I further move the Sandpoint Planning Commission, after consideration of the criteria.
No, you have to stop and vote on the comprehensive.
Okay,
plan
one at a
first.
time. Okay,
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna hold off right there.
Pause.
Got you. So the motion then is to approve this request for the rezone.
No, the comprehensive.
Well, the
plan
comprehensive,
amendment
yes, for the adjustment to the comprehensive plan on this one. And it is applying to this one small area.
A second.
Pardon? Oh, we have a second? Do we have discussion? Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Dunkel,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Kent,
Yes.
okay, and Mr. Ahmet?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. That motion passes. So now we can proceed with looking at the
I further
second
move.
portion. Yep,
Okay, I further move the Sandpoint Planning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend that the Sandpoint City Council approve the request by RPPT LLC and Blue Diamond Investments and Construction LLC to rezone and from industrial general to commercial C for the property known as 1801 and 1807 Culvers Drive and legally described as lots 13 and 14 of Cox addition to Sandpoint according to the plat thereof recorded May 17th, 1993 as instrument number 424699 in book 4 of plats, page 169, and amendment thereto recorded July 28th, 1994 as instrument number 449640, records of Bonner County, Idaho. The reasons for the decision are: number 1, the proposed zone change is in conformance with the future land use and other policies within the comprehensive plan. 2, the proposed commercial C as submitted with conditions incorporated into a development agreement
is consistent and compatible with existing zoning and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. 3, particular consideration has been given to the effects of this proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the planning jurisdiction. 4, staff has followed followed the notice procedures applicable to zone changes contained in Idaho Code 67-6511 and Sandpoint City Code Title 9, Chapter 9.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? I have one point of discussion. One thing, I'm not seeing anything in here that's addressing the water issue. Is this an appropriate time for that, or is that something that would come later?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is that in number 2 with the conditions incorporated into a development agreement?
So yes, your motion should include, if you wish, that there be a zoning agreement that you drafted that would include the terms and conditions related to utility improvements to address the current non-compliant services.
Okay, point of order. 5, what Fonda just said. That there be a utility agreement incorporated into the,
A zoning agreement that would include terms and conditions related to utility improvements to address the current non-compliant services.
sounds good,
As stated.
as stated, number 5.
Yes. Other discussions? Other points we should address at this time? Hearing none, if we're ready to vote. I'll start the voting this time. I'll vote yes.
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 Mose?
Yes.
Yes.
Me? Motion passes. Okay, thank you. The second item on the agenda this evening is a public hearing on a request for a comprehensive land use designation amendment from context area 1.5 to industrial and rezoning request for mixed-use residential to industrial general. The parcel is approximately 6.3 acres located at 425 Schweitzer Cutoff Road, RPS 3917000040A, and legally described as Lot 4 of Terraplane Place, a short plat, according to the official plat thereof, filed in Book 15 of plats at pages 99, records of Bonner County, Idaho. A notice of public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee, the city's newspaper of record, on June 14th, 2022. The order and procedure previously stated applies to this public hearing as well. Before we proceed any further, I would like to ask for confirmation from each commissioner, please, that you have had no ex parte contact and no conflict of interest for this request. I have none.
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 Thank you. And I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeten for an introduction of this request and explanation of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the request is for an amendment to the land use map and zoning at 425 Schweitzer Cutoff Road. The site currently is designated as C character area 1.5 on the comprehensive plan land use map, and the request is for designation of industrial. The site is currently zoned mixed use residential, and the request is for a zoning designation of industrial general. The site is also predominantly within the airport intercritical zone. On the request to amend the comprehensive plan land use amendment, the commission should make findings on the following questions. The proposed industrial land use designation is or is not consistent and compatible with existing and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. And the proposed industrial land use designation is or is not consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. On the zone change request, the commission should make findings that the proposed zone change is or is not in conformance with the future land use map and other policies in the comprehensive plan. The proposed industrial general zone as submitted or with conditions incorporated into a development agreement is or is not consistent and compatible with existing zoning and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. And that particular consideration has or has not been given to the effects of the proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the planning jurisdiction. On the request to rezone, staff has included some suggested additions that could be put into a zoning agreement to safeguard adjacent properties. One would be to restrict the uses permitted in the IG district to remove child daycare centers, schools, adult entertainment businesses, material resource recovery facilities, wholesale storage and distribution, including bulk tank storage of liquids, clubs, fraternities, sororities, lodges, and other uses determined incompatible by the commission. Require that the MUR district standards for building height of 40 feet and the maximum lot coverage of 70% are maintained. And require that the MUR district requirement for a maximum 6-foot fence or fence and landscape screening adjacent to residential uses is maintained. After receiving public comment and deliberation, the commission may recommend to city council that the comprehensive plan and rezoning be approved subject to a zoning agreement, or denied. That is all I have.
Do commissioners have any questions for staff at this time?
I have one. If you could go back to the previous slide where it talks about restrict the uses permitted in the IG district to remove child daycare center, schools, adult entertainment business, material resource recovery facility, wholesale storage and distribution, including bulk tank storage of liquids, clubs, fraternities, sororities. This only applies to this piece of property.
Correct. If you were to motion to approve subject to these put into a zoning agreement, the zoning on this site could not have those uses and it would only apply to that site.
Okay, thank you.
Question, what's the history of this property? I mean, I know it was before us before. Was that a rezone at that time, or was that a conditional use permit?
That previously there was a request before the commission for conditional use permit for multiple family residential.
Correct. Okay, but there was no comp plan or zone change at that time. That was just a CUP.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff at this time?
Mr. Chairman, the staff recommendations. So as neighboring or adjacent property owners brought up some of these uses as being something they're not into?
No, some of them, the recommendation is based on some of them being incompatible with being in the intercritical zone, and others are more heavy industrial uses that may not be compatible given the adjacent property owners. And then there's just some uses that might be appropriate in an industrial district that such as adult uses that at this site would likely not be compatible.
Any other questions, commissioners? If not, I will yield the floor to the applicant's presentation. If the applicant's representative will please step to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Derek Driggs. Some familiar faces, maybe a couple new ones since we talked last. Before we can probably really go too far forward with this property, kind of need to talk about where we've been. You guys kind of brought up a good point of this property's had a lot of land use actions in the last few years. And so it started with the previous owner requesting to get an MUR zone change, which was ultimately approved. At that time, that created a lot of red flags with the airport and incompatibility with that type of zoning within the airport. And so there was a lot of work that went into starting to look into what effects does this zoning have to do with the airport. And so in June of 19, City Council puts in a moratorium on zone change applications within the airport overlay district, adds a moratorium on any zone changes, starts developing the comprehensive plan process and elements, policies, goals for everything to do with the comprehensive plan related to the airport and the overlay zones. So it just kind of goes on and on. So then we buy the property, we full intent of using it for the MRU zoning and residential use, not knowing how much impact the airport overlay zone has with the property rights of this particular property. And so we go through the process and work with everybody, get approval through planning and zoning for 107 unit multifamily development, which shortly then after it gets appealed, the appeal gets approved through City Council. The appeals were from the airport and the affiliates of the airport. And through that process, we learned a lot about, what it means to be in those different zones of the airport and what compatible uses are and aren't, and what the airport wants and what they think is best there, and what we heard from the residents of what they thought was best there and their concerns. And so we've really put a lot of thought into what could we do with this property other than just walk away from it because it doesn't work for what we want to do, that's going to meet kind of everybody's visions and goals of what to do here and still be something that our partners want to entertain. And so I just want to go through the rezone explanations. There's 6 questions that they ask you about a rezone explanation. I think it's just easy to just go through those real quick. And so are there any similar uses in the area? It's a hodgepodge, right? We got the church, we got the jail, we got the fairgrounds, we got the airport. They all have similar type structures that we're eventually going to be proposing. You just have a really mixed use, and then you got some residential tucked in there. And then, the airport with the majority of the space there. The adjacent residential use isn't compatible to the airport within the intercritical zone, so you can't match to that use. The other uses are MUR, but aren't being used as MUR. There's an RS zone that's a church and a fairground. So in that whole area, it's really tough to say you're matching zoning with use and being, overly compatible with one or the other, because it's kind of a hodgepodge. What changes this though is the airport just bought this property that touches our southeastern corner of the land, and that was used with FFA funding, which per FFA it can never be used for anything other than an airport ever again. And so really what that does is that changes that into an industrial use. I mean, it's still zoned whatever it is, single family residence or whatever it is, but ultimately it's part of the airport and it's an industrial use now that touches our property. The other zonings to the around the property are, again, this was that single family residence that really is just becoming, to me, an industrial piece at this point. You got the MUR here, which is a single family residence. We've got the pocket of residences here, then the jail, fairgrounds, and so on. So I think everybody understands what's there. The blue or the purple box being the intercritical zone, that's really kind of dictating what you can do here. And so our request is to, realign this property to be compatible with Chapter 13 of the comprehensive plan, which is the airport, and Chapter 12 of the city code that adheres to the intercritical zone and the allowed uses within that zone. We'd also like to propose a zone agreement that, we want this to be beneficial for everybody, so that even though it's industrial, a use couldn't ever be done there that wouldn't be compatible with the airport or the single family residences or whatever the case is. And so we're super open to working with all parties involved to address what uses should be there going forward. And so we would ask that you would recommend approval of with conditions of a development agreement because we think it protects everybody involved here. So what are we doing? We're looking to build garage condos, shops that you can sell to individual users. So we're gonna come back and get a condo plat the right way. And no, just joking. So we're gonna condominiumize these with an HOA. And then sell these to individual users. They could be sold to businesses for storage or warehousing, not for like retail or, because there's no parking, there's nothing like that. It'd just be strictly for their storage and warehousing if a business was to buy it. There's going to be 7 total buildings. There's two large 23 unit buildings in the middle. We've got 4 11 units and then a 17 unit, all the same, 20 by 50 with 16-foot tall ceilings. Clubhouse with some amenities like shower, meeting area, TV lounge, and then we're going to concentrate kind of all car wash maintenance type activity. People bringing their RVs back, their ATVs, whatever. There's going to be a car wash there on that bottom. The blue boxes, those are just units, but they're pull through. So they're just identified as pull through units, a handful of those for people that don't want to back into their units or whatever the case is. And so again, we designed this around the 75 max lot coverage in the IE zone. I did see that there was a proposal that we keep this at 70. So that would be one recommendation that I would make, is that we can stick with the 75 max lot coverage that was originally within that MUR zoning, I believe, or within the industrial zoning. I'd have to double check on that. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to have the perimeter completely fenced. We're looking at a 7-foot tall concrete fence that our company produces. It looks like this. Oh, sorry. So it looks like this. So it's going to offer a lot of sound and noise buffering for the neighbors. That's going to be around the whole perimeter of the property. The front Boyer and Schweitzer, I believe we're looking at a product that's 4 feet of that, but with steel for a little bit of a better visual, just not a big old brick wall around the whole thing. But that's kind of what we're proposing on the fencing, and that would happen here soon. We would get the neighbors taken care of and get them all get some privacy back to those lots that they've had for a long time with all the trees that were there. And so what changes occurred? Well, it's the fact that we went through that whole basically casebook study of what the intercritical zone means and what it can do to the airport, what that can do to the economy. And so, really the denials, the reasons that we got denied there are the reasons that we should approve this tonight, is to adhere and try to comply with Chapter 13 and make those changes to this property. So this is just a little bit of a slide of, what is compatible when you're in a certain zone. And so we've got all these different zones within the airport. We're lying here within the intercritical zone. And so, really the only outright use is like cropland or open space. There's a lot of red here that they just don't want. And then there's a little bit of yellow, and some of those yellows come with conditions, and they want low use commercial or low use industrial. And you go through those items down below where it wants a Fair Disclosure Act. So everybody's going to sign that knowing that they bought a garage condo in the airport, and that there's certain parameters that come along with that. And so every buyer will be signing that. There is no residential. So the real meaning of the residential density, we're meeting that. Limit commercial use to low density and avoid high intentional commercial use, such as large retail box stores. This is about as low use of facility as you can get. And so plays right into the airport's concerns around safety, and the neighbors around traffic and any commotion that would disrupt some of those single family residences. This is an updated letter that we got from the FFA, just recognizing that our new plan still is okay and there's no hazard to the air navigation. So we're clear as far as building height and what we're trying to plan with the site plan there. Next, I'd just like to talk about really quick the 11 comprehensive plan initiatives and goals and policies, and just really touch base on how we are not impacting that negatively and or positively. So I'll just start with the first one around property rights. And so again, I mean, we really feel under the current zoning, your property rights are restricted because then the airport overlay comes in and it takes away a lot of the uses that you can do. It was zoned MUR, the amendment to the chapter 13 went in and it really took away the abilities to do much in that MUR zone that doesn't conflict with this. And so this is the MRU permitted uses with that chart we just talked about with the green, red, and yellow, this chart here, overlaid into the MRU. Sorry, the clicker's going a little quick here. So as you can see, half of it's prohibited when you overlay the Idaho Airport land use guidelines over the permitted zone uses. The ones I've starred on the commercial are just the handful of ones that I feel don't, after going through all this, don't meet the objectives of the FFA and the use and the light use. So you just get narrowed down to like 3 or 4 or 5 options there with the current use of what you can do with this property. So the airport's zoned industrial general. We are requesting a zone change from MAR to industrial general to be more compatible with chapter 13 and goal 3 and maintaining our property rights to develop under this new zone, because we feel this allows us to do something that makes sense for our group. And that goal 3 is outlined there, which is compatible and beneficial to that airport. As far as population, we're talking about recreation and Sandpoint transitioning from a resource-based economy to now manufacturing and recreational based. We're trying to key into that with large storage units that could house recreational equipment and would be in direct support of recreational amenities that Sandpoint offers. This building type isn't allowed in MUR, but it is allowed in industrial general. Again, Sandpoint recreation, the fact that Sandpoint has a strong recreational focus is the key to the city's economic well-being. By actively developing, enhancing, and improving the community's many recreational strengths, the city benefits its residents today while helping attract better paying jobs tomorrow. So again, our plan development would just add additional recreational amenities that are obviously outlined in the focus of what the comprehensive plan is wanting. So the current context is the CA 1.5, which encourages cluster development that prefers a congregation of dwelling units at a slightly higher density. So then it preserves open space. But again, that's within the intercritical zone. And so we can't have the higher density within the intercritical zone. With the amendment of chapter 13, residential is viewed as an incompatible land use, and within the airport overlay zones, our request to rezone to IG would be the same zoning as the airport and much more compatible. Housing is kind of irrelevant. It's incompatible per chapter 13 of the land use capacity. Transportation, we just feel like our plan development would work well with the existing land uses. Schweitzer Cutoff has been updated with pedestrian walkways and bicycle lanes. We anticipate extending a sidewalk south of Boyer which will bring all those residences with being able to walk up to the park and fairgrounds and church. The goal, recreation, goals and policies in this plan seek to increase access to existing parks, provide for more parks, create viable connections between neighbors and parks. Our property is going to connect, the park on the northwest corner of the property there of the fairgrounds to Boyer Ave and the houses to the south of us. So that just kind of ties into just adding value to everybody in that area. Our plan development will be served by existing utilities and provide stormwater management, solid waste disposal, and snow storage on site. It will not have any impact to natural resources or be determinant to the air quality of the city. We do feel in the event of something happening at the airport that this facility, the materials used at this facility, and the amount of people that would be at this facility when a potential disaster would happen is about as minimizes those risks about as much as we think possible, other than open land or whatever the case might be. There's no really historical significance. We're going to add buffer trees, landscaping throughout the property to bring back just some of that natural landscaping. So again, in summary, the request rezone makes the property zoning land use more compatible with airport and specifically the overlay zones. It would meet an implementation action plan as outlined in chapter 13 that would require action by the city to provide code updates and high priority with the goal of providing these updates this year. The project is a low use facility, will not increase traffic in the area. The potential increase in traffic was a big concern to the neighbors that came out in opposition of the last proposal that we were doing for townhouses. With this proposed concept, the human density on the site is minimal, which mitigates the safety concerns within the inner critical zone of the airport. So that's what I have for you tonight.
Thank you. A very thorough presentation. The commissioners have any questions for the applicant before we proceed to public hearing?
Oh, you already shut it down.
Oh, sorry, I can share it.
I just wanted to see the image again of the project.
Sure. Oh, there we go. The site layout, is that?
Yeah, yes. Is there any chance in your plans that any of this, any of these buildings are built above grade, like a dock high level?
We don't have that incorporated into the plan at this point.
I just had to ask because it, you know, it sounds like it could be for commercial use.
Well, it's storage and warehousing, mini storage. I mean, it's basically the closest thing you can put towards it, which is in the industrial general zone. It's not a commercial zoning thing for like mini storage type facilities. And so to me, that's about as close as this is coming. You know, it's kind of a hybrid for our area. We don't really have this, but they've been doing them in Post Falls. Spokane, Coeur d'Alene has this concept spreading pretty quickly. So staff, through staff recommendations, a lot of thorough look at this. This is where it made sense to have that product.
These,
Yeah, I think it's a great concept.
yeah, these are individually deeded, that's as opposed to rental.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
And they're all identical in size, it looks like.
Correct.
107.
Yeah.
Is, would you envision them being built before they are sold, or would there be the opportunity for customization?
There's a little bit of opportunity for customization. We may run some sewer capabilities to the ones that are closest to Boyer, just for somebody that wants to have a bathroom within their facility. We're offering bathrooms, so we don't think it's overly lucrative for us to be running sewer lines all over the property, but there could be the opportunity early on for somebody that if they got in early and wanted some customization like that. Yes, we can offer that. Some finishes that we wouldn't probably do once the builders are gone and such. So to answer your question, yes, we're going to pre-sell these units to a certain point before we start the development. And then at that point, those pre-sell type people will have some abilities to do some stuff that maybe others wouldn't.
Do you have any concern with the 40-foot height ceiling that was requested by staff?
That was a maximum, right? The 40-foot height. So no, we're
Correct. So
a total of 18 feet, I think.
So your project is still below that, so you'd, as a group, you'd still be amenable to that
Yeah.
as a zoning?
Yeah.
And what about the restricted uses? There's no envisioning for a child daycare center, adult entertainment business, material resource recovery. I'm just getting ready so that I can not be too corrected by error. And the big one is wholesale storage or distribution. My question in regards to wholesale storage or distribution, what is to prevent the deeded owner from doing wholesale storage and distribution? Will that be in the HOA agreement?
Yeah, you'd have your CCNRs within the HOA agreement that's going to define what you can store in there, what type of things can be in there, no hazardous, large capacity hazardous materials and stuff like that. And so, yeah, we're going to model off of other facilities and govern it through the CCRs and HOA on what people have in them or are allowed to have in them.
And so no concern with bulk storage of liquids, clubs, fraternities, sororities, lodges, or other uses?
No,
At this time.
no, I mean, I think with the
adjacent neighbors, that just protects them from, future uses down the road that could be a hazard to them. So we're fine with eliminating those uses. Thank you.
You envision any possibilities of a commercial use in this area? Would it be allowed under the kinds of changes that were?
The only commercial use that would be allowed is just storage, warehousing, somebody
Right.
that wants to buy a bunch of pipe and just have it storage or a bunch of whatever. I mean, and they're just coming to grab their supplies and heading out, but no, there's not gonna, the CCNRs will govern no commercial use.
So if someone wanted to open up a boat repair shop, this would not be the place to put it.
Right. I mean, we're not adding parking. We're not,
Right.
doing anything to service a commercial use. It's strictly, the majority of people are going to be individuals. There will be a handful of businesses that use them for warehousing, but not, it's mostly people that are storing their RVs and toys and, people
But if
that-
they do that, do the restrictions affect them if they want to use it as warehousing? Like
No.
Luke had just brought up.
No, we're going to leave it open for businesses to use it as warehousing as long as it's not hazardous to, to the other
And-
users.
And that it's not distribution though.
Correct.
I mean,
Used for their general businesses is
Yeah.
what we've seen. There's somebody that has a widget and they need a lot of them and they need somewhere to put them and they go grab them and go put them in other places.
Wasn't it suggested that the warehousing portion was to be stricken out?
Wholesale storage and distribution.
So they would put in their CCNRs that nobody would be allowed to utilize any of the units for.
I think we would. I don't know that wholesale storage, I might have misinterpreted that. I mean, I don't see where that should be a restricted use. If somebody wants to store stuff like whatever it might be, as long as they're not having customers come on site, I don't see that being an issue, but
I think it's being addressed right now.
mhm.
I would suggest striking that or leaving it in there.
Again, the commission needs to remember that you are being asked for a comprehensive plan change and a rezone. You're not looking at the site plan.
Yep.
So you have to envision anything that, while I fully trust they're going to do what they're saying, you're looking at what are the appropriate uses for the site. So it is completely the commission's discretion which of these uses you think are or are not appropriate at the site.
prepared to ask staff questions once we let the applicant.
Yes,
sit.
I have a
and
question.
after public hearing, yes.
Oh, pardon me.
Is a 70% or 75%
Okay.
the sticking point?
It's not a sticking point, but I don't understand where we got kicked down to the 70, because through the whole thing, we've been talking through with everybody and looking at requirements has always been 75. So I guess I would just question where the 70 is coming in at. And I don't see in this situation where 5% is going to make or break anything for the neighborhoods. It definitely changes our door count. And I feel like with the fencing and the vegetation that we're going to provide, we're giving adequate, I guess, buffers and green space for the people that are driving around the facility.
And one other question, and that was just all storage is going to be indoors. There is no outdoor storage.
Correct.
Yeah.
One more question. Do you have a price point?
No, not at this point. We're definitely going to do an entry level to try to pre-sell those at a lower cost than what we'd like to sell them long-term at, but we haven't decided on a cost price point. We're still really early on getting all the costs together to even know what the cost is going to be per door to then, back in. But it's going to be cheaper than you can go buy land and build your own shop and maintain it for. Just barely. I'm just.
Commissioners, any additional questions for the applicant before we proceed to the public hearing?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir. The public hearing is now open. We will now recognize those in the room who wish to testify in favor. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody who wishes to testify in favor?
We do not have anyone in the room that would like to testify in favor.
We will now recognize those participating remotely. If you are participating on Zoom and wish to testify in favor of this request, please raise your hand at this time.
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone on Zoom that would like to testify in favor.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom or in the room who wishes an opportunity to speak in favor? We will now move on then to those in the room who wish to testify neutral. Do we have anyone in the chambers wishing to testify neutral?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone in the room.
Thank
that would
you.
like to testify.
We will now recognize those participating by Zoom who wish to testify as neutral. Please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, there is no one on Zoom that would like to testify as neutral.
Is there anyone else on Zoom or in the room who wishes to speak as neutral?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We will now recognize those in the room who wish to testify in opposition. Madam Clerk, is there anyone here in the chambers who wishes to testify as opposed?
Mr. Chairman, there is no one in the room that would like to testify as opposed.
Thank you. Finally, if you're participating on Zoom and wish to testify as opposed, please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, there is no one on Zoom that would like to testify as opposed.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom or in the room who wishes to speak in opposition?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak and has not had an opportunity to do so? Commissioners, do you have any additional questions at this time? None? Okay. Being no testimony, there's no need for rebuttal. Before the public hearing is closed, do commissioners have any final questions for the applicant?
No.
Thank you. So the public hearing is now closed, and at this time, the commission will deliberate. No new information may be provided, and questions may be directed only to city staff during deliberations. Commissioners, do we have questions for staff at this time?
Mr. Chair. Oh, I'm supposed to direct the questions to you. Mr. Chairman, could I get some staff assistance in clarifying wholesale storage versus wholesale distribution? Because just my understanding as I'm up here, I don't want to use the incorrect terms such as grandfather, grandmother, or anything familial. This wholesale storage, that seems to be a property right, whereas wholesale distribution seems to be more of a commercial aspect. But I'm curious if that, could I get context, please, Mr. Chair?
I would, it's not defined in the code, but I would agree that it is saying your business is wholesale storage and distribution. So that is the business operation. So it's essentially a trucking operation and warehousing. And that is including bulk tank storage of liquids.
So we're looking at something that is not in code. That seems exceedingly a vague thing to try to pin down. So if my parents want to store 100 million pounds of gallon bags for blueberries, that is an illegal use if we were to use that for a wholesale storage of those 1 gallon bags.
It
If
is
it was
legal
included.
in the industrial general district. The question is whether the industrial general district at this location, if those are the uses the commission thinks should be allowed at that site.
Thank you.
I guess my thought on that is that wholesale storage would be an acceptable use, but wholesale distribution would not, because that would increase traffic. That would have more people coming on site, and there'd be other things associated with that. That's the way my mind is processing those two things. Distribution, or just storing it there would be acceptable. I mean, this is what I'm saying, but distributing from that point, like now those 1 million bags are full of blueberries.
Correct.
And they could not sell from this site. That's how I envision the difference.
That would be, could even be considered retail, but
Right.
I think
it would,
that-
yes, true.
I think the line of thought here on commercial wholesale and storage is important not only for the applicant to be allowed, but for business incubation. And as long as it doesn't increase the traffic to some, unwelcome level, I would like to see that part. I can't remember the language exactly that was introduced in the very beginning, but I'd like to see it be allowed.
If we could see that slide that had the staff recommendations on what the allowable uses that we would strike from this site were.
And I'm not advocating for bulk liquid storage.
Why not?
It requires, bulk liquid storage requires like holding tanks or spill preventative stuff that, is
Right.
terribly problematic for, in this case, the applicant. It could be. And it would, bulk distribution would require, in most cases, trucks with tankers. And I think the access would be super limited for that.
So when we come to that point, that would be something we consider if we wanted to strike that one phrase.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Luke.
Oh, pardon me.
Go ahead.
In a previous meeting, we had a conversation about HOAs.
Mhm.
Is this something that would be appropriate to be included in there to prevent the commercial store or wholesale storage of, if we're talking liquids, because that makes sense depending upon the type.
It may be, but the city does not enforce homeowner or HOA restrictions. So what we're trying to come to is, from a zoning standpoint, the appropriate uses.
I think I'm getting more clear. We are changing the comp plan use designation.
The two-parter again, yeah.
Yeah. But not really, like we're making up a new one, it feels like. Because of the MUR is still sticking with a couple of things that I think are pretty significant. I'm not clear why the 6-foot fence needs to happen unless the applicant was into that. That's not an IG zoning requirement, is it?
It is not, and that is why it's staff's recommendation that you have it. I understand their site plan they're showing you shows a nice stone
7-foot fence.
fence.
Yeah.
But again, all you're looking at is the zoning. So the current zoning is MUR. And that's why keeping with some of the MUR standards is staff's recommendation, particularly because you don't know that the zoning has changed and tomorrow the landowner sells. And the person that comes in wants to do something completely different. So that's just what we're safeguarding against.
But there's IG right in the neighborhood. That's a little south, the one property that came up a while back, the large piece.
All the airport property is
Okay.
IG.
And then, so from what I'm gathering, the opinion is neighboring properties, since there are some single family property in the immediate area, quite a bit, really. Is that the sole, or is that one of the large reasons to keep the MUR stuff with this?
Correct.
Yeah.
And with-
Even though, in my opinion, I can see that consideration, but it's an encumbrance on the property. It's not full IG. And I think it should be, because it is in that zone where it's so limited. And what else could, I don't know, the 40-foot height, that doesn't seem like that's an issue, but like, as you said, they could sell it right after this and they could go to what, 45 feet? Which is still,
In industrial general, correct.
okay. And then the 70 and 75%, I don't see that as being too big of an issue either way. But the restricted uses, I think 50 years down the road. That's where I'm kind of having a stake, the airport's bigger. It's pretty close to the runway. Maybe something happens with the runway and the taxiway to where people that use the airport want to use these too. They can't store an airplane in there unless they bought 3 of them. But possibility, because there is hangar space is a problem at the airport. So I'm in favor of not having any restrictions and just going straight IG. But that's my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes,
What was the reasoning, Amy, between the 70% and 75%?
Those are just the 40 feet in the MUR and the 70% are what are currently in the MUR.
Okay.
So it was just maintaining those, if you're gonna upzone it to industrial.
and I know that, again, in the MUR, the fence to separate this from the existing residential was a very important part, as well as that it be the first thing built in order to maintain some privacy. And certainly it sounds like the developer here is willing to do that in order to maintain privacy for the existing single-family homes that border this.
Well, I think that also is an element of security too for
Certainly,
the potential buyers.
certainly.
My stance is this property going to become more of an airport property or more of a residential property? The properties around it that homes are being built on eventually will probably be something else. It may be a long period of time, but my personal experience with the airport, things are getting bigger and louder and more of them. And less people are going to willing to live in, especially in this intercritical zone. And noise is not going to be an issue. Somebody driving their truck in, there's gonna be the last thing that people are worried about, I believe. I do think it is, if the applicant wants to build a fence, perfect, for their use, that's fine, I think. I don't see that as being something that should be an addition to. And like I said, I'm thinking long-term, down the road, that could be something that the city has to, go and enforce later on when something else comes up and the property changes somehow. If somebody decides to buy all the units, which would be great. So that's what I'm thinking. The applicant right now is planning to do majority of the stuff anyway. So for the meantime, I think the MUR stuff is being carried forward besides the 75 to 70% thing. So.
I think your earlier concern about, I think I'd call it a hybrid, because if this were to pass as it is now, it'd be color shaded gray, industrial general, with MUR characteristics.
Some of them, correct.
I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around that portion of it. If we're gonna go industrial, why the concern keeping MUR characteristics other than, I guess it's just the surrounding properties are MUR and.
My thought is that in order to meet the city objective of compatible with existing
Right.
neighborhoods, that
That is why.
that's a huge step in the right direction, is to have that physical and visual barrier between single-family residences and storage units.
But we're speculating on that. I mean, we don't know.
You mean that storage units will be
The MUR piece on there, if it's a bridge
right?
to the closer properties. I don't know that.
We do know that the prior approval for this property, though, was denied by city council due to being in the inner critical zone, which was the addition, which is really the genesis of why we're looking at this zone change to begin with, because of the importance of the airport as both a business incubator, and then in prior meetings, we've had the discussion of the lack of industrial properties that are available for development.
Right.
So this hybrid is a useful tool.
Mhm.
And I'm prepared to make a motion.
Please do.
Let's hear what you got.
Mr. Chairman, let me make sure I'm on the right page before I get corrected.
And again, it's a two-parter, so we'll look at the.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Sandpoint Planning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend that the Sandpoint City Council approve the request by Big Boy Toys Condo LLC, excuse me, the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission approve the request by Big Boy Toys Condos LLC for a comprehensive plan map amendment to change the future land use map designation for the property known as 425 Schweitzer Cutoff Road, RPS 3917-000040A, and legally described as Lot 4 of Terraplane Place, a short plat according to the official plat thereof, filed in Book 15 of plats at page 99, Records of Bonner County, Idaho, from context area 1.5 to industrial. The reasons for this decision are the proposed industrial land use designation is consistent and compatible with existing and future land uses in the vicinity of the site, in particular due to the location within the airport inner critical zone. The proposed industrial land use designation is consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to zone changes contained in Idaho Code 676511 and Sandpoint City Code Title 9, Chapter 9.
Second.
Do we have any, the motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any other discussion this time? This is on the comp plan amendment. All right, shall we take a vote? Commissioner Bowe?
Yes.
I vote yes.
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 It is unanimous. Thank you. And then on the zone, did you want to proceed?
Mr. Pardon me.
No.
I further move the Sandpoint Planning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend that the Sandpoint City Council approve the request by Big Boy Toys Condo LLC for a zone change from multi-use residential commercial to industrial general on the property known as 425 Schweitzer Cutoff Road, RPS 3917-000040A, and legally described as Lot 4 of Terraplane Place, a short plat according to the official plat thereof, filed in Book 15 of plats at page 99, Records of Bonner County, Idaho. The reasons for this decision are, number one, the proposed zone change is in conformance with the future land use map and other policies within the comprehensive plan. Two, the proposed IG zone, industrial general zone is submitted with conditions incorporated into a development agreement, which I will reference, is consistent and compatible with existing zoning and future land uses in the vicinity of the site. And number three, particular consideration has been given to effects of this proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the planning jurisdiction. Staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to zone changes contained in Idaho Code 676511 and Sandpoint City Code. Title 9, Chapter 9, but I would like to go back to the zoning agreement, which should, number one, restrict the uses permitted in this district to remove child daycare centers, schools, adult entertainment businesses, and adult entertainment businesses and material resource recovery facilities. Number 2, to require that the MUR district standards for building height are at 40 feet. And number 3, to require that the multi-use residential district requirement for a minimum 6-foot fence or fence and landscape screening adjacent to residential uses is maintained.
I would second that. Discussion, commissioners?
I would move to amend the 70% requirement in the MUR to the MUR portion. Sorry, I don't think, it's not an MUR, is it? There's no MUR, we're just adding these.
And the 70% was not included, is
Right.
my understanding.
Was
of
not?
the
Oh,
vote.
okay.
Not mentioned that.
Oh,
Commissioner Duncan.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Withdrawn.
Thank you. Other discussion? Are we ready to take a roll call? Mr. Kemp, you go first this time.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Ahmed.
Yes.
I'll vote yes.
Yes.
And Mr.
Yes.
Mose, excellent, thank you. Motion passes. With no further business before the commission, this meeting is now adjourned at 7:00 p.m.